Welcome. The Foundation for Global Sports Development is honored to have you join us today. Before we get started, the content surrounding this event may be triggering for some, as sexual abuse, grooming, and certain cases that have made national headlines will be discussed. We encourage you to practice self-care and pay attention to how you're feeling throughout the event. This is a safe space for survivors, and you are supported here. We will have some resources posted in the chat in case you'd like to speak to someone. So let's get our courageous conversation started. I'd like to welcome David Ulick, co-founder of the Foundation for Global Sports Development and its media division Sidewinder Films, and a producer of critically acclaimed documentaries such as At the Heart of Gold and Endgame. Thank you, David.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here with us to celebrate our 2022 Humanitarian Award winner. In 1996, when I co-founded the Foundation for Global Sports Development alongside my dear friend, sports psychologist, author, and producer, Dr. Steven Ungerleider, our mission was to deliver and support initiatives that promote fair play, education, and the benefits of abuse-free sports for youth. At that time, we didn't know the true scope of abuse in sports. But in 2018, when we researched and produced At the Heart of Gold, Inside the USA Gymnastics Scandal, a documentary that explored the Larry Nassar case, we realized the extent of the problem within elite sports. Dr. Ungerleider, as a former college gymnast and father of two gymnasts himself, considers it to be one of the most important projects he's ever worked on, because it shed light on the issues through the voices of the sister survivors who lived it. Their message helped us all understand what needed to be done to help protect future generations of athletes. We were so moved by their statements and courage that we gave the Foundation's 2018 Humanitarian Award to the sister survivors and pledged $1 million to help prevent abuse. As part of that commitment, we launched the Courage First program to educate the public on the topic, providing free screenings and panel discussions, which is how we met this year's award winner. Today, we're honoring a remarkable man, a former University of Michigan running back, former Seattle Seahawk, New England Patriot, and Kansas City Chief player, a father, entrepreneur, and activist committed to ending sexual abuse by educating others and supporting statute of limitations reform in Michigan and other legislation focused on protecting youth. John Vaughn is being presented with our Humanitarian Award, our highest accolade earned by individuals and organizations that have stepped up as leaders and champions for social, economic, political, or environmental justice and equality, for his work to change the culture of sport and athlete care. A couple of years ago, as new revelations about abuse in sports kept hitting the headlines, Steven said the work had begun, but sadly, there was still much more to do. John Vaughn is doing that work.
John Vaughn is a hero in football, and I think he's known for that. Now he's a hero for those men who can't speak about the unspeakable.
I mean, he's one of the strongest voices that there is in sexual violence at this time.
He stood out there at 8:15 and a half, South University, in front of the president's house. I'm not going away. This is happening.
He was sick of being silenced. He was sick of nobody listening. He was sick of waiting for results.
I listened to this story, the circumstances, and why he was pursuing this. He wants answers, he wants accountability, and he wants action. It's not just about John Vaughn. It is about honoring his mother. It's about honoring his children. It's about honoring all his teammates and his community and all of those who might suffer after him.
Yeah, it would have been much easier to stay quiet, but I think there was a balance of good and bad. But the end goal was, how do we, as victims who are perpetrators, have passed, the individuals that empowered him had passed, how do we leave the university or the world safer than what was left to us?
You don't often hear men talk about such pain with such courage and dignity and strength, and you can actually feel it from John. It emanates. It is so deep.
John is hail to the victims. He is everything behind this. He has stood up to the world and said, hey, it's just not young women or kids. It can be big, tough guys.
You know, he's taken something that's extremely personal and terrifying for most and shown, particularly for men of color, but for all survivors of sexual assault, that this is a human issue. This isn't a female issue. This isn't a men's issue. This is a human issue.
John's actions are so selfless and exemplary. He stands up for all of those without a voice who said, I can't do it. And they look at John and they say, if he did it, I can do it.
Because at the end of the day, I am just a human. And I do care about humanity. And hopefully, you know, if I look back on my life in 20 years, we're not having the same conversation. And I'd love to be an influence in that. We're not having these conversations anymore. There's no need for these awards anymore.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Trinae Gunzar, one of the people in the video you just saw, who has been on a journey of healing and advocacy for the last 5 years. Currently the Director of Development at Avalon Healing Center, Trinae has been a globally recognized voice as one of the sister survivors and a steadfast supporter of the victims of sexual abuse.
As David mentioned, I'm Trinae Gunzar, the Director of Development at Avalon Healing Center, a nonprofit organized in Detroit, Michigan, focused on delivering free and comprehensive services for survivors of sexual violence. As a former recipient of this prestigious award, I want to express what an honor it is to be able to share this space with someone I personally watched go from victim to survivor and everything in between. With resilience and courage in ways humanity should never have to. Someone I have sat with in the darkest of dark, strategizing about how we can support other survivors and hold each other accountable in order to guide other victims and survivors back into the light. Someone that has not only changed the trajectory of my life, but the trajectory for all survivors in the current state of society. Today, we are here to honor one of our brother survivors, one of my best friends, and a man I have watched not only change the image of male sexual assault victims, but someone who has shown what it's like to give everything in life and death to make change for generations to come. Today, we honor a man that has emerged as a formidable voice in sexual abuse, awareness, and prevention, and is fighting to make real change. John Vaughn is an example of strength, having experienced harsh conditioning elite athletes are subject to in order to play the game at the highest level. From a young age, children in these settings are taught that suppressing their emotions will help them to perform better. They're taught to never cry, to never ask questions, do as you're told, and to push through any degree of discomfort to achieve greatness. They are constantly told, this is what it takes to be a champion. As the survivor himself, John has used his voice and his name to take back his identity and rally other University of Michigan, Dr. Anderson survivors, and anyone who has ever been abused or sexually assaulted. Due to rape culture and societal stigmas, it's particularly hard for men to report abuse. John is standing up for those who can't, quite literally, standing outside the University of Michigan's president's house, chained to a tree, for 17 and a half hours, 1 minute for every known survivor of Dr. Anderson. That was after John spent over 100 days camping and protests outside that same building. During those 100 days, John was approached by current Michigan students, faculty, and community members, many of whom disclosed their own stories of abuse. They not only expressed their gratitude for him being there, and bringing attention to the problem. But during the 100 days, John was told that the university's campus felt safer with his presence. As a society, we must protect those brave enough to bring difficulty truths to light and do what we can to fix the problem. When athletes raise concerns about the way things are, they should be heard. Institutions should listen and respond appropriately instead of continually enabling predatory behavior and labeling the athlete the problem. If organizations are allowed to keep covering up sexual misconduct, we all lose. Most don't know the story of how John and I became friends. I mean, we are sort of like the odd couple by look. But I promise, when people see us coming, they either know something is about to be burned down or we're about to show up for someone in their battle with the Goliaths, as John would say. In truth, we never should have met. He lived in Dallas, I lived in Detroit. He played football, I was a gymnast. But we shared one common denominator. And as I watched him speak on a panel as the voice of his sexual assault, I thought at that moment, how can I help him? We organized a meeting at Avalon Healing Center in hopes to bring a place of support to these men, only to have John look me dead in the face and say, "Trinae, you have no idea what it's an honor to sit across the table from you today." He said, "You are like a superhero to us." I sat in shock and in tears, but knew at that very moment everything in my life I knew was about to change. We would go to Costco, masked, mind you, and be recognized. Usually at first it was John in football, but then John as the man that was protesting, and then me as that Nassar survivor. We would drive in circles planning safe spots where he set up at the University of Michigan and what cameras were in place for safety. We planned clothing due to weather changes and many funny stories I will share when we have a book one day. But today, I want to return that quote of yours, John, because John, you have no idea what an honor it is to sit across from you today. You are a superhero to me and to so many. On behalf of every survivor, thank you, John, for your dedication to a cause that affects everyone. Thank you for using your voice to fight for change. And thank you for being you, John Vaughn. Congratulations on receiving this award. With that, I'd like to hand it over to the famous and wonderful Judge Rosemary Aquilina, an amazing woman and the 30th Circuit Court judge from Ingham County Court, Michigan. Judge Aquilina presided over the Larry Nassar's trial, mine included, and famously allowed any survivor who wished to make a personal impact statement in court to do so. One by one, empowered those who came before them. 156 survivors gave statements. If we were the voice, Judge Aquilina was the microphone and the stage. I am honored to introduce her.
Trinae, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Before I talk about John and how we met, I just want to give a shout out to you for continuing to carry the torch for all of the survivors and for joining the mighty John Vaughn in his exact same quest, being the voice of the voiceless. I'm really honored to be here today to help celebrate with John. John, congratulations. John and I met after I had met Dr. Steve Ungerleider and David Ulick, and we were in the Heart of Gold after the Brave Sister survivors testified in my courtroom, and that film was created. And I stayed in contact with the Foundation for Global Sports Development because of the wonderful work they've done, and whenever they've called and asked for help, I've been there, as has Trinae and so many other people, on their mission to eradicate sexual assault in every form. And I received a call from Dr. Ungerleider, and he said, "I have someone who wants to talk with you, who wants you to hear his story." And I said, "Absolutely." So we met, and I was introduced to John Vaughn. And I had known the name John Vaughn because my brothers watched football many years ago when John was playing at U of M and then NFL. but I never met or paid attention particularly to players. It was a football thing, right? And I quickly learned, meeting John, what a force he is. I knew he was a force on the field. But when I heard his story embodies all of the pain that I not only heard from the sister survivors, but from thousands of victims in my courtroom. His heart runs deep, his pain runs deep, his empathy speaks to all victims and embraces their hearts as well. He doesn't just talk the talk, he takes action. He treats people with kindness. And what's most impressive about John is that he really is selfless. He gives of his time and says, I'm not done. I'm not done until you know my name, until you know the name of every victim. I am not a number, I am a name. And John is the voice for the voiceless. He's working for victory for victims. His motto standing out there for those 100+ days was hail to the victims. And people were out there not only chanting, but telling him about their pain, and he absorbed it. And he is the role model for accountability, for action, integrity, and he's demanding reform. It is such an honor to have met him through Dr. Ungerleider, and we've become friends. And I've just been so fortunate in being part of his journey. And so as part of this, I want to say, John, congratulations. And you are my hero. You are not alone. You stand with the voiceless and you make them heard. And it is such an honor to know you. So now I would like to share a recorded message from another former football player from the University of Michigan, Chuck Christian. Chuck is also an Anderson survivor who, together with John, has become a strong voice within the Hail to the Victims movement. And he's just an incredible human, just like John Vaughn. And thankfully, because of John Vaughn, so many have stood and are shouting loudly with him and partnering for change. And it's all because of you, John.
Hey, John, congratulations. I just want to say that I am so proud of you, big fella. I just think about all the lives that you've changed since you've been fighting this fight. You've changed not only hundreds, but thousands and thousands of lives. And you've changed mine. And I'm glad that you are one of my best friends now. And I'm always going to be your hype man. So whenever you need me, call me. I love you, brother. Congratulations. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Chuck. I couldn't agree with you more. You're both changing lives, and we are all so very grateful to you. And now, John, I have a special surprise message from someone we both know. And he's a good friend of mine. He heard about the award and wanted to make your day special by sending you a very personal message.
A big hello to my good friend Judge Aquilina and the Foundation for Global Sports Development. I am so glad the judge asked me to do this today. I want to say congratulations to someone very special to me, John Vaughn. John has become the voice for the voiceless. His work against sexual assault and becoming the face of all those who have been sexually assaulted, especially men who are silenced simply because they've been trained to be strong and never talk about that pain. John will never be a John Doe. He will never be a number. John Vaughn is a name to know. John Vaughn is a hero. Congratulations, John, on your Humanitarian Award. You deserve it. And keep up the good work. I am so proud of you and so proud to call you friend.
And with that, it's my honor and privilege to introduce the recipient of this year's Humanitarian Award, John Vaughn. Congratulations, John.
Thank you. You surprised me with Chuck. Surprised me with Tad. Always say I can get through this stuff unemotionally, but I want to thank Global Sports Development, its board of directors, staff, and partners in honoring me and what has become my passion and my calling. I am truly humbled, honored, and inspired just by my association with you all. To be here today, I couldn't have made it without some amazing people that all played a part in this award. Mike Cox and David Shea, who battled Michigan and its attorneys for 2.5 years. Your fight also inspired my fight. Rob Huth, my personal attorney, whose guidance, wisdom, and calm demeanor, even through my venting and questions throughout this fight. Your calmness helped calm me, and I love you for that. To the media who covered, spoke, and wrote the truth to give exposure to this atrocity, we not only need you, but I appreciate you all. To Rebecca Modrick and all of the professors who supported me despite the possible retaliation by the University of Michigan, your support was a pillar that I leaned on in the tough days out of the camp. To Tony, Jack, Bill, and Dean, you are my guys. I couldn't have made this as long without you guys, saving me from my first time ever camping out. I also thank your wives and significant others for dealing with the time that you were away from home. Jack, I'll see you on Sunday for some football, cigars, and that much needed scotch together. Tad DeLuca and Chuck Christian. We became the most unlikely three amigos. I am eternally grateful for our friendship, and I love you both dearly. To Dave and Bagley Freights, your 3 sons, and the ICC family, thank you for welcoming me into your lives and providing me what at times was the only safe place in my life during this battle. I love and miss you all. Britt and Chuck, my brothers, thanks for dealing with the ups and the downs through it all and keeping me sane. Some days you will never know how much coming to see you both kept me alive. Eric Knuth, I want to thank you for dragging me down this rabbit hole and basically ruining my 50th birthday celebration. But seriously, I knew you as a teammate and a friend. But these last few years, getting to know you as a man, husband to Jackie, and father to the littles and the bigs, no words can express the love I have for you and your family. I ride with you for life. Thank you for always reminding me that sunlight is the best antiseptic as we strategize behind the scenes before I would speak. Justin, aka Alfred, your support was immeasurable. You know what you mean to me in this fight. Shannon Henry, as we always say, he never calls the equipped, but equips the called. I thank God every day for your place in my life. I truly love you, friend. Kim Hurst. Avalon Healing was my lighthouse in the storm. It was the one true safe place that I had up here in Michigan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Words don't fit how much you mean to me and how much I love you. Amos Giora. What started out as a Hail Mary to get understanding of how an institution could let such an atrocity happen, and then introducing me to the American Bar Association to produce our books. You have become so much more to me than just a co-writer. You have become a dear friend. And as your mother always said, let's kick some ass and expose it all. I can only hope that the world is excited about the book we are writing to change the world as we are. Judge Rosemary, you are my hero, mentor, and one of my most trusted friends. We must make more time to get together and catch up. We're far too close. Rocky Ratliff, my Ohio State brother and fellow survivor, I am with you in your fight as you were with me in ours. We will always stand with you and the other OSU survivors. All of the students and professors, your stories and support fueled me so much. It was you who were all hoping to make Ann Arbor a safer place for. Hail to the victims embodies your spirit daily. Trinae Gonzar, your strength, courage, solidarity, and fight is the foundation of how and why I found my voice to speak up and to speak out about Michigan. My sister from another missus, stay in the light and know that I am now and always next to you on the front line in this fight. And to my daughters, even through my brokenness, you all have always been my reason to be. Sorry. If I may, I want to give you all a visual look into what it was like for me on a daily basis on South University. I have never camped in my life. I was not prepared to have to stay as long as I did. I hoped every day that President Slissel walked out of his house as he did on his way to work, that he would have a simple moment of humanity, but instead, he would turn the corner and never look or even speak to me, as if I was garbage. I would have fellow survivors from the Nassar case, sometimes old teammates, often people from the community, to learn about why I was there, bring me pizza and donuts. I ate so much pizza and donuts during that time. But I too am a survivors, and these stories and the horror of it all weighed on me. I would often walk to the bathroom at around 1 a.m. in fight mode, not sure who would stop me or if I would be recognized. Some would stop me and say thank you. Some would stop me and take pictures as I was their idol from football. Some would stop me and have no words, just crocodile tears in their eyes at the sight of me. Once I would reach the bathroom, my only place of privacy, I would usually crumble. The tears in the bathroom stall as I sat were for my daughters, were for my family, were for the survivors that came before me in this fight. My tears were for my soul as it was broken. I often wondered how I got here. Was this really my life? Was this what had to happen to get a conversation about my rape? Was this the only way to help others on this campus and other campuses around the world? But often at camp, even with the few others that joined me, I feared for my life. as there were credible threats against me. My health was going downhill fast. My heart was turning dark in anger. One of my best friends from the Nassar case was often the only person that would get me back into the light. She reminded me this was bigger than me and that no matter what happened in the past, our future was to change every survivor's life by making sure they knew our fight for solidarity, our fight for hope, our fight for change would never end. So this is my charge for the future. Solidarity is more important today than it ever has been in this fight because precedence is being made by 7 universities: Bowling Green University, Cleveland State University, Eastern Michigan University, Michigan State University, Oakland University, Purdue University, and the University of Michigan and its border regions are all standing in solidarity with Ohio State to support them in their fight against survivors in a horrifying sexual abuse case, as well as the scandal currently going on with the U.S. Soccer Federation. The Goliaths are teaming up, and we must say no more. Lastly, I want to thank the University of Michigan football program and Bo Schembechler for instilling in me to always do the right thing, always. And your coaches who trained me in a perpetual state of being uncomfortable, only to thrive in an arena of organized chaos. You built me for this fight. I am not John Doe. I am John Vaughn. Thank you.
Thank you. That was incredible. We've heard from a few of the guest speakers of the steps you've taken, and you just talked about a few of those within the community to fight for change and camping outside the university, which I know you fared every single kind of weather. And you've worked for legislative reform. You're co-writing the book with Dr. Guerra. Since this is an event honoring you and your story, can you tell us a little bit more about what the journey has been like in terms of some of the obstacles and how you are dealing with uncovering the traumatic experiences? And one more piece to that, because I was there, I saw you, I felt the pain, and I saw the closed door. The president, all he had to do was walk a few steps out of his front door, shake your hand and say, John, what would you like me to know? And that never happened. In fact, he preferred to write a $480 million check. How are you dealing with that? What's this journey like for you?
Well, first off, without a doubt, this has been a life-changing experience. I found out more about myself, actually, than I probably would have. Like I said, it took 2 weeks after my 50th birthday to really even find out that what we had endured in the process of becoming Michigan Man was sexual assault and rape. And so it was really crushing because the foundation of everything that I knew and everything that I had been trained for in going from a boy to a man had crumbled. And so, I felt more things physically and emotionally than I think I'd ever had in my life. It was the first time I was having panic attacks. I remember talking to my attorney, Rob, one day about, the death threats and, should we tell the police and, and all those things. It was more of, I think I'm in this alternate reality. Like, it wasn't really real for me until I actually did the first interview in ESPN. And at that point, the hate and the slander of even some of my teammates, even going so far as making 12-minute videos, talking and just trying to discredit me. And all I was doing was just telling my truth. And so in a lot of ways, and I joke with this analogy, every day was like climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops. Because you had to push yourself farther than, especially from an emotional standpoint and a transparent standpoint, than most usually have to do. But at the same time, it was extremely rewarding. You know, like in the darkest of dark, I remember nights where Chuck and I, two middle-aged, old, gray-haired Black men in camping onesies, like, you know, like with the footies and all that, are laughing about, we're safer right now in this tent than we were in our own locker rooms. But the difference that we're making for all these students and people within the community was well worth it. And just how the ironies of life brought us together, considering we were both Michigan men, but yet we had never met each other until these circumstances.
So tell me this, because I know the camp, it grew and grew and grew, but tell me about, we're going to go backward. I have a lot of questions to ask you, but I want to go back because I think people want to know, what was that day? And I remember talking to you about what you were going to do, and you talked to several people about, I'm going outside. I'm going to sit there until the president comes down. And you actually did it. What was that moment where you said, I have no choice but to sit out there and speak out?
Well, you know, now that it's all over, really, I started thinking about, we must do something. We as the survivors must do something to change the narrative about 90 days before. And just in a sleepless night, I remember doing a Google search about protests in Ann Arbor and at the University of Michigan since 1960. And it's specifically protests that helped change the world. And knew that the First Amendment had always been protected and encouraged at the University of Michigan. So I let it kind of marinate. I started to eat less. I started to sleep less. But these were all like kind of secrets. I was just kind of keeping it to myself because, you know, I still didn't know how we were going to proceed. Because it got to a point where, you know, speaking to the media just wasn't enough. And I can tell you the day, I think it was September 23rd of 2021, my brother and I had driven up from Dallas to be at a protest because it was the first in-person meeting of the Board of Regents in a couple of years because of COVID. And I remember walking into that meeting, and the first thing that they did, they gave the president of the university a 3% raise. And there were more victims of Dr. Anderson in that room than had ever assembled in person. And it was at that point, in that 19-hour, you know, drive back home, that I said, all right, I'm doing this. But at that point, I'm still talking to myself. And so once I got back to Dallas, I actually called a teammate of mine, David Key, and I said, David, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna stay out until we get our voices heard. And I need, you know, David is a nutritionist and a personal trainer. And I was like, how, you know, we got to think about hydration and all that. but this is what I'm going to do. I'm packing a backpack and I'm buying a one-way ticket. Told my family, friends in Dallas. And then of course I called Eric and I called Trinae. And the great thing about Trinae is she's that friend where I come up with these crazy ideas and she's like, who's driving? So, because she had, over the time that we'd known each other, could see the frustration. And what I think also helped was she gave me so much insight on her battle with Michigan State. And so, I will tell them now, but I had purposely not told my attorney. Wasn't even going to tell him till I got out there. And it just so happened that he called me on Friday. So I was like, well, I probably should tell him. And I remember calling Chuck. And Chuck says to me, John, it's going to rain. And I was like, you know what, Chuck? As Bo Schembecker used to say, if you practice in the North Atlantic, you can play in the North Atlantic. Or just the opposite. If you play in the North Atlantic, you can practice in the North Atlantic. I was like, dude, I was built for this. Chuck, this is nothing for us. And we need to be heard. We need to have a conversation. So if they won't invite us in or come to us in a neutral place, then I'm going to go to them. And so I, me being naive about camping, I was like, all right, I just need to stay dry. So Kim Hurst and Trinae, it was like, all right, we'll get a soccer mom tent. Because quite frankly, I really thought I'd be, it's a Black man protesting at the president of the University of Michigan, the #1 public institution in the world. I felt like I would probably get arrested in 24, 48 hours anyway. That didn't happen. And so what really, and I know I'm fast forwarding, but really what solidified the protest for me, where there are very few instances in life where a personal exchange shows you how great a cause is, so much bigger than you is. I had seen a young female student a couple of days that I'd been out there, as she's walking by, she's kind of looking at me crazy. But then on the second day, in the morning, on her way to class, she says to me, I spend more time on this campus and at this university thinking about the next time I'm going to be raped or sexually assaulted than I do thinking about my major. And I understand why you're here, and I hear you because no one listened to me. And this is just my sophomore year. And last year, we were virtually because of COVID. So within a month and a half or so of her starting school, that was her thought. And I remember calling Chuck and calling Tad and calling Trinae, and I was like, this culture that permeated itself in the athletic department for over 40 years has now spread and infected this entire campus. And so I don't know when I'm leaving, but I know we're going to make a difference. I know that when we leave this campus, we will make it safer than before we came on it.
Absolutely. And I know for the sister survivors, the process of reclaiming their identity and their voice, just shedding their pain, was when they gave their impact statements. I felt it. Each one left a little taller and a little less painful. It doesn't mean it ever goes away. There's a lot of hard work, but they were able to begin to reclaim themselves, to know they matter. You didn't have that opportunity. So I want you to talk about that, but there was one statement, because I know you watched the Sister Survivors, and there was one statement that really, I think, planted a seed in you to tell your own story. Can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, I remember watching specifically Trinae's impact statement, and all of these images of live human courage started flowing through my mind, like the man standing in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, Mandela walking into jail, or even Martin Luther King marching, and seeing how, when you look at, there's 8 billion people in the world and over a quarter of those have suffered some type of sexual assault or rape. I felt like that was one of the most courage live events that I had ever seen. And after watching it over and over again, it started, once I found out about the University of Michigan case, it started to help me. How do I take her courage to speak directly to her perpetrator, to now speak past the grave, to speak to Bo Schembechler, who recruited me, to speak to Dr. Anderson, who from first visit used cancer in my family's history as a grooming process to digitally rape me 50 times. And then once I saw Trenae's impact statement, I started looking at all these different impact statements, from Cosby victims to Weinstein and just so on and so forth, because there wasn't many, if any, male people that looked like me, survivors, that were speaking to their perpetrators. So that also helped bring a level of empathy that I hadn't ever had. I always thought it was a female to male thing. I never really realized that rape is rape, whether you're a male or female. We all suffer. We all have recurring trauma. We're all the same, because, as Trenae said earlier, it's a human issue. It's not a male or female, black or white, old or young. It's a human issue.
I think that's the huge importance of you being a U of M football player, an NFL football player, an enormous Black male. If you can be assaulted, anybody can. But even better, okay, because that's horrifying. But the great thing about this is that if you, as a football player, a revered human being who was on that team and made all those plays and carried the ball for your team, you are now carrying the ball not just for women, but for Black men, for people of all color. Men don't speak out. You are speaking out. Trans, gay, everybody has talked to you. I watched it happen. It's the most amazing thing as you're outside the president's home. And there's a rainbow of people of all ages, the young to the very old, coming up to you and telling you their story, because you are the embodiment of everybody, every walk of life. Does that help you reclaim your identity?
Absolutely. A couple people have said you carried that burden of the curse of hearing so many stories, but for me, it was a blessing. I heard over, right around 600 individual stories from males and females, about 40 to 50 young men, graphic details of their rape within this 100-day period of time. And I remember talking to a therapist who had been a therapist for 40 some odd years, and said, in my lifespan of being a therapist, I probably only heard 4 or 5. You now have heard 10 times as many, 100 times as many as I have. What keeps you up? And a wise person once said to me that if you look at tears as a positive, because in a lot of cultures, tears are your ancestors supporting you. And so when you look at, I could always bring it back to what I was dealing with at the time was something that happened to me in 1988. But the time for change is in 2021. So that I would practically apply parts of these stories. I felt like I carried the souls of the victims with me. And I would, especially when I would talk to the media, I would tell parts of Anderson survivors' stories that had told me in confidence after I got their permission to say, like, this is the type of things that was happening to us. It was empowering, but more than anything else, I think it gave me a level of, being a girl dad, I've always had a ton of empathy and compassion. But this changed me. Like, it reached a depth that I didn't even know that I had the capacity to know. I knew I could push myself physically and meant, to play a sport. But to really have such a condensed, intimate, human connection with so many, it just changed my life. It really did. It made,
So I remember,
it made the
I
hard
remember-
things easier.
I remember the first time we met, and through tears, you told me the story about your mother and everything that happened, like your whole journey. And now, the arc of you have grown, you are stronger, you are thoughtful in a way of everything I say is going to be meaningful, it's going to matter, it's going to be for change. And that takes a certain toll on you. How is it you are able to push forward day after day through weather, through death threats, through carrying all the pain that you are told about because you feel it deeply?
Yeah, I think, the great thing about, and mind you, I love the University of Michigan. I love being a Michigan man. I love the training that pushed me to represent another player because we're getting ready for a game with 103 fever. Sacrificing for the man next to you because you knew he was sacrificing for you. And so it actually, I'm going to say it's easy, but it's also very difficult, if that makes sense, because there's a, it's just like it clicks on and I stop thinking about my own self-preservation when you're in the fight. Because the minute you second guess yourself is the minute you slip up or the minute you get hurt or the minute that one person who is listening, whose life might be saved that day, you just can't. And so I think team sports really, and especially football, really helped me to not think about the hardship or not think about the pain. Like cold is a mentality. Like it was, because I'm chained up into a tree and it's the coldest day of the year. It's got down to like -4 something at that time. But yet I feel like those 17 and a half hours were 17 and a half minutes.
So there were so many people bringing you their pain, and you really brought them on as your team members and took care of them. What do you think were some of the things that were able to be said to them by you, by Trinae, that kept them moving forward from victim to survivor to thriver? Because you shared many stories and they looked to you for words. What did you tell them?
So I think the first thing that I always tell victim survivors, I hear you. And you're not alone. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can tell someone who has faced just trauma, but especially sexual trauma. There's so, there's so much victim blaming and all the, you're villainized and things of that. And what I say, it's like being a victim of sexual assault or rape or sexual violence is an ever shrinking island. The only way that my island grew was because Trinae said, "I hear you." And you can literally see the physical relief when you just tell someone, "I hear you and I see you." What is your name? I mean, I would ask people, and I'm horrible with names. Like, it takes several times when I meet someone for me to remember their name, but I always wanted to know their name because I wasn't going to have them be anonymous to me, because I know how that feels for someone to make you out to be anonymous, a Jane or John Doe, a faceless, nameless victim. I really thrived off of the human connection. That's really what got me through. I think humanity got me through.
And I know that's been your big thing. I'm not John Doe. I am John Vaughn. You know my name. I am a victim, and you hear me. And I know, you've said that, you live it, you breathe it, you are making sure victims have their voice. But what else do you think needs to happen in this society to destigmatize, first of all, any victim coming forward, but especially male victims coming forward, because they simply don't? I mean, you are one of a minority voicing sexual assault as a man, but we need to make sure that, as we've said, as I've said many times, Trinae, you've said it, we've all said it, it's a human issue. How do we get that issue to place the blame on those who caused it, not on those who are speaking out against it?
Well, I think, we have to be, Rocky Ratliff and I talked about this several times. There's a couple things. One, people have to understand, if big football players or wrestlers or hockey players can be raped, so could they. And that in these cases, it's usually one perpetrator, but dozens of people within these organizations that protect, empower, and groom victims and the administration to allow this type of behavior to persist. So I think more than anything else, we have to be realistic about our self-worth. And I, from the standpoint of whether it's USA Gymnastics, Michigan State, University of Michigan, these institutions wouldn't be these institutions if not for the students and not for the student athletes. We have a worth. So I think we must, it's why Chuck and I came up with Hail to the Victims, because we were going to celebrate. It's like we were taught. We go into a game knowing and thinking we're going to win, not hoping we're going to win. So we were going to take back ownership of our own self-victory as victims. And, in history, Hail has always been a victory chant. And I think that voice has to come in different shapes, sizes, ages, sexes, identification. We must all collectively come together with one voice. And if there is, like just in the Michigan case, here's the numbers that I do know. Roughly 70% of scholarship athletes during Dr. Anderson's time were African-American men. So you can't discard, or you can't have a complete conversation about sexual assault, sexual violence, rape, grooming, enablement, and all that without bringing in the entire wheel and the spectrum of what victims look like. Until we as a society are ready to have those hard conversations and accept those hard realities, there will continue to be marginalized communities that don't feel like they have a voice to speak up and to speak out.
Well, we've talked many times about the enablers being co-conspirators with the perpetrators, and that has to stop. And I know that from my end, the legal system is often an injustice system. What do you think it's going to take to make sure that we don't see abuse on this level again? Because there's a lot of work to be done. I know it's a big question.
Well, I mean, you're talking to the guy that, I'm not afraid of Michigan. So I'm not afraid of the Nikes. I'm not afraid of the ESPNs. I'm not afraid of these brands that basically fund the terrorism of rape. These institutions are creating syndicates of abuse. There seems to be a master playbook on not only how we empower, enable some of the worst perpetrators of sexual crimes in the history of the world, and then they create these Goliaths, these armies that are well capitalized and well funded, and usually a well-funded army is a victorious army. So we have to have conversations with the brands that continue to fund these organizations. We have to have conversations with the media outlets that cower to the blue wall, per se, that won't cover the entire truth. We must have conversations with legislators who, when it's time for re-election, they want to parade victims and re-traumatize them and announce bills, but then once they're elected or sessions start, those bills fall on deaf ears. We must call out the hypocrisy, specifically in cases where universities that have been mired, let's just take two, Michigan State and the University of Michigan, spending close to $1 billion on victims, is going to support Ohio State University, not even in their state, in its defense against the same type of predator who, ironically, all of them had contacts with each other, Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State, in their case to silence, to villainize, and to continue re-traumatizing victims of a serial rapist that you enabled for decades. So we must call a spade a spade. We must constantly, as one of my best friends in the world says to me all the time, sunlight is the best antiseptic. We must create a conversation of authentic transparency, not legal rhetoric, to protect and shield the institutions that perpetrate and propagate sexual predation for centuries. At the end of the day, and Trinae and I talk about this all the time, you either are for rape or against rape. There is no middle ground. And if your middle ground is silence, then you are for the perpetration, if that's a word, I make up words sometimes, I'm sorry, of rape, period. There is no gray area in this.
So you spoke about brands. Do you think the new name, image, likeness policy, which allows the NCAA college athletes the opportunity to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, will dampen the grip on the higher learning institutions that they have on the athletes in terms of finances? Is this a good step? Is it not? And then if you can talk about, how do parents protect their children from this, in athletes, from being abused in any athletics?
Well, I think evolution is good, and I think the sport has evolved. And I do think, my mother was a teacher, and my father in his last job was a janitor. And I remember summers where we would go to Walmart, and I would start the summer with 2 big old things of Kool-Aid and a case of tuna fish and Cheerios. And that's all I had for the summer. So I was dependent upon the university for everything. I was forbidden to see other doctors. They were my gatekeeper to everything that I wanted to do as a college athlete. I think the NIL has given back more power. I think, as I heard from one of the Anderson victims who was a hockey player, I spent my 20s, 30s, and early 40s taking back control of my life because the University of Michigan took it from me. So I think that's good in that way. I think just like now, as it pertains to the parents, and I really think we need to, more times than not, it is the mother that gives the final say for children to leave the nest, the mother bears, so to speak. We must create a movement of mothers to ask the tough questions, to not be jaded by Go Blue and Sparty and The Ohio State and USC and Alabama and all these institutions, USA Gymnastics and whatnot, US Soccer. We must have a movement of mothers and educate them on the questions. Like one of the things we talked about on Dr. Phil was creating a student and an athlete Bill of Rights, where you can also create one for the parents that they can ask the questions and ask for transparency and not feel like their kid is not going to get a scholarship or not going to be recruited because they want to know and ask the tough questions.
Thank
and I
you.
think that honestly starts with the mothers.
I have to agree with you. So the Humanitarian Award comes with $100,000 donation to an organization of your choosing. Have you decided who you're donating to and why? Can you tell us why you chose that organization?
Yes, I've chosen PAVE, which stands for Promoting Awareness, Victim Empower, and Angela Rose. Over the last, 20 years ago, she founded PAVE. And it's a movement creating a world free from sexual violence and building communities to support survivors. She's definitely shattering the silence. And over the last month or so, Angela and I have been having conversations that paralleled each other's vision for the world of survivors with different technologies, as well as I'm a part of her speakers bureau. And what I'm most excited about is creating an alternate, almost metaverse technology platform that will, for me, be able to go into the military and, sports and high schools to encourage young men to speak up and to speak out. And, a lot like my relationship with Trinae, I come to Angela and I say, all right, I'm jumping out of the airplane. Let's build the parachute on the way down. And we've decided to partner to really get the word out, but to also create tangible properties and opportunities for what the only thing I know that can't be argued is I know what it's like to be an African-American male in the United States of America or in the world. But I'll never not know what it's like to be a man. And I'll never know what it's not like. I'll never not know what it's like to be a man who has suffered rape during my childhood and at my institution of higher learning. And all of the pitfalls, stigmatisms, and barriers for men to get help that then eventually prey into, mental health issues and things of that nature. So I'm excited about the partnership. There's definitely more to come. We were up last night working on press releases and the website that went out this morning and is being updated today. But it gives me the opportunity to express myself and forward the fight and the mission, and really change the narrative to what I really call it is one solidarity, empowered by PAVE.
And you're on the advisory board of a new joint initiative from the Foundation of Global Sports Development and Child Health that's aimed at providing resources for athletes, their families, coaches, administrators, and anyone who needs assistance regarding a sports-related abuse question or needs information. And you're working with Daphne Young, the Chief Communications Officer from Child Health. Can you tell us about that and how you two are working together? And I think we're going to bring her on.
Yeah, I am excited about being a repository that athletes or parents can use to get help as it pertains to sexual assault, sexual violence, their trauma. And, I can't speak it as well as Daphne. I'm just honored I feel like this is a change the world moment with this hotline, and I'd like to introduce you to Daphne Young.
Hi, Daphne. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. John, I always forget that you mess up my mascara every time you talk. I need to, you really, you get to the heart of the matter, and you are so present and true and real in the way that you speak. And I know there are people listening today who are still in the shadows of abuse, and you give voice and courage to them. And so I hear you, I see you, as you said, and congratulations on this amazing humanitarian award. The first thing that we need to do to hold enablers and bystanders accountable is to support and empower victims. Hail to the victims. And your gritty activism, confronting people in power with a simple sign that says, I am still here, to have to walk out your front door and see that every day. I don't know who can turn away from that. I don't know what you're made of when you turn away from that, but I can't imagine how many people walk by you, students, survivors of rape, who just cheer you on. And that gives your purpose a lot of pushback. And it's the difference between just having a calling and raw courage. And it challenges the rest of us. Like, what are you going to do? I'm out here, I'm camping. What are you going to do? And to your point, it's not just legislation that happens around November to trot some folks out and then put it on the back burner. And so your advocacy for victims of sexual violence, along with others like Trinae and America's best judge, bar none, who gives us all strength, encourage the Foundation for Global Sports Development and Child Health to develop a new helpline that will be the first of its kind in the world. And thanks to you and some fellow subject matter experts, we have an advisory board. A new generation of young people pursuing their sport of choice will have a powerful tool to ensure that they are safe and feel valued. Child Help's been supporting abused and neglected kids for over 60 years. And for the last 25 years, FGSD has collaborated on initiatives with us to protect children from abuse in youth athletics. And we heard from David a little earlier today. I remember having a lunch with Dr. Ungerleider and David Ulick and our Child Help founders, and we were just daydreaming, like, what would this look like? How could we keep kids safe? And we came up with this Child Help Speak Up, Be Safe for Athletes that was underwritten by Global Sports and delivered the curriculum in schools and sports camps. And we reached over 170,000 children, coaches, parents, community members. And that was all in Arizona. So question 2, how do we bring this to the nation? How do we get everyone some support? And this year marks our 40th anniversary of the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline, led by Michelle Fingerman and Laurel Jacobs. And it's the premier service nationwide, and it's a model for hotlines across the globe. So as a result of the sister survivors and John's work, your work in the Michigan case, bringing this all to the forefront of public attention, we reached out to experts in the field to see what we could do. Is this needed? Is it helpful? And where's the expertise? Where's the research? There was very little. There's a handful of people doing this important work. We made a list of the top 5 and just cold called. We had no connections. We had no one to put us in touch with these folks. And number 1, 2, 3 came forward. Dr. Ashley Sterling, who's the most widely published expert in the field from the University of Toronto, stepped forward. Dr. Emma Kavanagh from UK's Bournemouth University, who's the current chair of the British Association of Sport and Exercise Integrity Advisory Group, stepped forward. Dr. Robin Ortiz, who's a physician and NYU professor of pediatrics, joined up. And Dr. Lauren Trednick and Anita Daniels, who co-founded the Alliance of Social Workers in Sport. Every single one of them stepped up. So we have years of expertise. You can imagine how much that costs. And all of them donated their time, their talent, their years of research for free to create a curriculum and training module to give our counselors that specialized edge in dealing exactly with these issues. And with you on our board, joining Dr. Ortiz and Anita Daniels, also award-winning coach Lisa Finnegan, giving us that coach perspective, Director of World Paravolley Lori Okamura, Parent Rep Brooke Olson. Let us know. John talked about the mothers. Here's a mother of some youth in sports. We need that voice. Olympian and advocate Brittany Rogers also joins us to round us out and set us up for success. So today, the dream that we have created over this year with weekly meetings and so much technology and so many huge hearts participating is becoming a reality. And I'd like you to meet our spokesperson, a very cool guy who's been with Child Help for over 4 decades, even though he still looks 29, and he sends his love and he honors the fighting spirit of all the brave survivors honored here today. And wanted to tell you a little bit about Courage First.
Your first act of courage is to survive. Your second act of courage is to ask for help. Your final courageous journey is to heal. Now, the Foundation for Global Sports Development and Child Help have created the Courage First Hotline in partnership to protect young athletes from abuse in sports. Now, whether you need immediate help, prevention resources, or a little support, or a counselor, we're here to help. From Little League to college sports to the Olympics, being groomed for athletic stardom should never include being groomed for abuse. Your voice is your courage.
All right. So pretty cool guy. He's going to be supporting us every step of the way. We are pleased to announce that the Courage First Athlete Helpline is launching right now in real time, and it will provide access to specialized counselors supporting athletes, coaches, parents, anyone involved in sports who have questions or concerns about abuse. This program will offer emotional support, crisis intervention, athlete-focused resources for children and adults in any sporting community. So thank you to the survivors who inspired us, the foundation that uplifted this vision, and our collaborative teams who brought it to life. We honor you.
Daphne, that is so needed, wonderful, outstanding. Thank you. How do athletes or parents, anyone interested or in need, access the helpline?
You can call, you can text, you can chat in the US and Canada at 1-888-279-1026, or visit our website, Courage First. There's an easy button to get right to all those resources. It's available right now from 12 p.m., 8 p.m. Pacific time. And there's a rollover to our national hotline 24/7. So folks can literally call anytime and get some free counseling. The counselors are trained in our trauma-informed methodologies and then receive specialized curricula developed by our panel of experts to address issues related to abuse in athletics.
And is this a confidential hotline so nobody has to worry about what they say?
It's confidential. We can translate in over 170 languages through a service, so your voice will be heard no matter where you come from. We know a lot of trafficking of athletes come from foreign athletes who often don't have connections in our country and who often don't have a support system. So whatever your language, we've got someone that can communicate with you and hear your story. And on a personal note, some of the professionals who are drawn to this service are counselors who survived abuse in athletics themselves or who are part of professional sports and witnessed it on the sidelines. So you're talking to someone who is professionally and personally a safe person who understands where you are and will meet you any place in your journey to heal.
And what kind of questions can people call in with? Because I know talking around the globe, when I talk about grooming, gaslighting, ghosting, love bombing, all those things that predators use, people say, well, what's that? And they don't really understand it. They don't know why they're feeling like something's wrong and they don't know. Can they just call and say, I might have a problem or I'm uncomfortable with, or, what are there parameters?
No parameters. So we can intervene in an immediate crisis. That means if a child is on an away trip and something happens in a hotel room, we can get officers to that hotel room and intervene. We can offer support and resources. And to your point, someone's talking about maybe a grooming situation. Hey, I don't know if this is bad or good. I'm a gymnast and my coach is offering me some extra private training. He tells me not to tell anyone else because he didn't want them to be jealous, because he really sees I've got a path to the Olympics. But then he kind of sends me weird text and it feels weird and I don't know. And it's that little gut feeling that we say, make the call. It's not about reporting. It's about talking it out long format. Let's talk about what they're doing and let's show you what grooming looks like. Let's show you what gaslighting looks like. Like maybe you confront it and he says, well, you're crazy. You're obviously have teenage delusions. I'm certainly not interested in you. Telling them the types of things that people will say when they come forward. It can be a survivor who just said, I haven't been sleeping well for the past couple of days. John talks about, just that energy that you have with your family sometime where you're so depleted and your heart is hurting and you're like, I need to talk to a family member and get them a little closer to understanding what I'm going through. Do you have any tips? Or I just need to sleep tonight. Can you do some grounding exercises with me? And we can do
it would be also like John was saying, the moms. A mom could call and say, my athlete is acting a little differently. What are some things I could do to help? Could that happen?
Absolutely. Parents, also great coaches that say, I'm a compassionate coach. I want to learn more about body safety and how I can train and get my team all thinking the same way, that we're going to be safe, because there's a lot of peer-to-peer abuse that also happens and coaches can get in front of that. So anyone who's either in crisis, who needs resources, who's trying to do preventative work, everybody's welcome.
So John, this is great for current and future athletes. How would this have helped you when you were going through your abuse?
The first thing that came to mind is it just gave somebody outside the program, or in some cases outside the cult, to just be able to express your concerns or feelings. Specifically, I remember the confusion of, are you injured, are you hurt? That was the first time I was ever really groomed on the field about the threat to seeing Dr. Anderson, but I couldn't comprehend that. And what's the difference? Because if I'm injured, it does hurt. So it would have been just nice to be able to have someone to speak to that wasn't connected or didn't have a vested interest in the program. That'd have been great. And, you know, just frankly, I think, you know, for me, ignorance, I guess, is bliss, but I didn't know what a prostate was. So going into a prostate cancer screening, I knew what cancer was, didn't know what a prostate was. So I could ask some medical questions like, I'm getting a prostate exam, I'm 18, is this normal? You know, it's screening, but I've never had cancer in my family, you know, so I think it would have been extremely helpful. But I also think more than anything else, the existence of this hotline, even back then, would have kept some institutions from continuing to cover up some things, because opportunities for victims scare perpetrators.
Absolutely. Daphne, thank you so much for announcing the launch of this helpline. You're going to save lives, and for giving the details on how people can use it. And John, congratulations again, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know that you've inspired so many, and you'll continue to do that. And you have just got such a great future of your own, but you are saving the lives and futures of countless people. So congratulations for the award and for all you're doing. You're my hero.
Thank you. And this goes right up from my girl's dad plaque. So I appreciate it, and I'm humbled, and I look forward to fighting the fight with you all in the future.
Thank you. David.
Thank you, Judge Aquilina. That was amazing. Your conversation with John and Daphne has given us such a great understanding of the long-lasting impact of sexual abuse and why prevention is key. John, wow, thank you for your passion. You brought tears to my eyes. Thank you for all you've done to increase awareness and help drive solutions to this issue. You're so deserving of this award. And I know I'm not alone when I say I can't wait to see what you will accomplish next. We're honored to help support your work and hope others will join us in doing so. On behalf of Stephen, myself, and the whole GSD team, I'd like to thank everyone for being here to honor John Vaughn, and our deepest gratitude to Judge Aquilina, Trinae Gonzar, and Daphne Young for sharing their expertise and insights with us. Thank you, of course, also to those who recorded messages of congratulations for John, Chuck Christian, Ted DeLuca, and Dr. Phil. Thanks as well to John Stamos for lending his support to the Courage First Athlete Helpline. We encourage you to join John Child Help and our efforts to help end abuse. If you want more information about John's work, Child Help, the Courage First Athlete Helpline, or the Foundation for Global Sports Development, we'll be posting a slide with websites to all of them. This concludes our program. Stay well and be safe.